ram was already caught in a thicket before your test even began. Not after the wood was stacked on your shoulders. Not after your arm grew tired holding what you were sure you had to carry alone. Not after the last thread of your courage gave out. Before these words are finished, I'm going to show you exactly where it was standing the whole time. You have been living inside a story where the worst part is not the wound itself. It is what the wound trained you to expect next. Somebody promised you something with their whole mouth and gave you nothing with their hands. You believed a person the way you should have believed a promise. Then they walked away. They took a piece of your trust with them, the way you take back something that was never really theirs. I have watched you reread the same message, hunting the punctuation for a meaning that was never hiding there. The friend who said, always somehow meant maybe. An apology got rehearsed under your breath 100 times, delivered to no one but yourself. The way you rehearse a line for a play that never opens. I see the version of you that still answers the phone fast, just in case this time is different. The nights you spent doing quiet math. Who was safe, who was not. I did not miss a single one of them. Shame handed you a new name after they hurt you, and you have been answering to it ever since. Why does the same old wound keep introducing itself as something brand new? I did not look away from any of it. You have canceled plans more than once so no one would ask why your voice sounded thin. You have smiled through a conversation while doing math in your head. How fast could you leave the room without anyone noticing? None of that was weakness. That was a nervous system trying to protect you, protecting what was left after somebody proved they could not be trusted with it. Somewhere in the aftermath, you started rehearsing what you could have done differently, as if better behavior from you would have kept a careless person honest. It would not have. Their choice was never a referendum on your character. You have spent enough nights auditing yourself for a crime someone else committed. Maybe you are the friend who forgives too quickly now, because being difficult even once got you abandoned before. Maybe you are the parent who over-explains every small decision because somebody once used your silence as proof against you. Maybe you are the one who apologizes for taking up space in rooms you were actually invited into. I know which one you are. I have known since before you did. Trust, once broken carelessly, does not grow back the way it was. It grows back different, slower, more watchful, keeping one hand near the door at all times. That is not a flaw in you. That is wisdom bought at a terrible price. I do not despise it, even when it makes new closeness harder than it should be. You have gotten very good at reading a room before you enter it. Good at clocking exits. Good at noticing the small shift in someone's tone before anyone else in the conversation does. That skill kept you safe more than once. It also cost you something. Every single day it runs. A kind of vigilance tax most of the people around you never have to pay. I see the tax. I'm not asking you to stop paying attention. I'm asking you to let some of that vigilance rest in me, instead of carrying the whole weight yourself. Here is where the old story breaks. The version you have been telling yourself has rules. It says the silence after a wound means you are on your own. On your own until you prove you are strong enough to deserve rescue. That version has a mountain in it and a long climb, and no answer waiting at the top. I know that mountain. I asked a man to walk toward one just like it, long before your particular grief ever had a name. Right where you are, let your shoulders come down. Not dramatically, just a fraction. The small give of a knot loosening its very first thread. That is enough for now. You do not have to solve the whole ache today. I was watching the day it happened to you too, whichever day holds the sharpest edge of this. I did not turn my face away while you were being marked. I did not treat your grief like a spectacle, not once. I did not enjoy your struggle to figure out who was still safe to let close. The people who hurt you do not get the final word on what you are worth. Their failure was real. It does not get to become your identity. Shame has a particular shape, when it comes from someone who was supposed to protect you. It does not just say you were hurt. It says you never should have trusted at all. It keeps that accusation running quietly, under everything else you do. You second-guess compliments now. You brace for the catch hidden inside generosity. You have learned to treat warmth as a countdown to disappointment instead of what it actually is. I want to interrupt that account today, not by arguing with every entry in it, line by line, just by telling you plainly, none of it was ever the truth about who you are. Every mountain with no visible ending has felt like proof that I left you to carry it alone. I want to tell you something about mountains like that before we go any further. The silence on them is rarely what it appears to be. The math you do at 2 a.m, replaying the exact sentence that let you down, searching for the moment you should have seen it coming. I have sat with you through all of it, not silently judging your vigilance, understanding exactly why it developed. You have learned to read kindness for hidden costs. The last time someone was kind, it turned out to be a transaction. You check the fine print on affection now. I'm not asking you to stop checking. I'm asking you to let me be the exception your instincts do not have to defend against. Now hold on to that thought, because it matters more than it sounds like it does right now. The wound is real. The caution it built in you is reasonable. But none of it changes what was already arranged for you before the wound ever landed. I'm not going to ask you to pretend the hurt did not happen, or rush past it. So this message feels tidier. Grief that gets rushed only comes back louder later. Take whatever time you actually need with it. What I am asking is smaller. Let me show you what was happening on the mountain. You thought you were climbing it completely alone. That part of the story you have never fully heard. The picture of me you have been carrying was painted by someone else. By every person who made you prove your worth before they gave you anything real. You learned to read my quiet as a scale. One you had to tip in your favor. The way you had to perform for people before they would finally show up for you. So the silence stretched, after the promise broke, after the door shut, after the apology never came. You assumed I was doing the same thing to you, testing your patience, watching to see how much you could carry, waiting to see if you cracked in front of me, deciding afterward whether you had earned the rescue. That is not who I am. And it is not the shape of what actually happened on the mountain I am about to tell you about. I am not standing with my arms folded, not measuring how much a person can carry before they break, not keeping score to see if they qualify for help. I am the one who walks ahead of the need. I hide the answer in the branches, long before the question is ever spoken out loud. The waiting you have been doing was never a test of your worth. It was the space I was using to finish arranging what you needed. I want to tell you something I wrote down long before this particular ache had your name on it. There was a father named Abraham, an old man who had waited decades for the one son he loved. I asked him to walk 3 days toward a mountain. No explanation attached to the journey, no argument he could make, no reason he could repeat to anyone who questioned him. Only the walking, the boy beside him, and a silence between them that grew heavier with every step. That silence is the part I want you to notice first. It was not punishment for either of them. It was the space where I was still arranging what neither of them could see yet. On the way up, the boy asked the only question a child could ask. "Where is the lamb for the offering?" The old man answered with the truest sentence he owned, that God would provide it himself. He said it before he had any proof in his hands. Empty arms, an unsteady voice. He kept climbing anyway. Hold on to that sentence before we go further. An honest answer, spoken with nothing yet in hand to prove it was true. They reached the place I had shown them. The altar was built stone by stone. The sun was bound. Fear binds all of us to the worst ending we can imagine that way. A hand was raised. The way you have raised your own hand toward the very thing you were sure you were about to lose. Then a voice stopped everything before the blade could fall. Lay down your hand. Do not touch the boy. Now I know. Here is what happened next. In the exact words, I had it written down for anyone who would ever stand on a mountain like that one. Genesis 22:13. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram, caught in a thicket by his horns. Read that slowly. Behind him. Not somewhere ahead on a road not yet walked. Not delivered by a rushed messenger at the last possible second, barely in time to matter. Behind him means it had already been there, through the entire 3-day walk, while the altar was built stone by stone with trembling hands. While a question got asked that deserved an easier answer than the one it received. The eyes were not fixed on empty branches, not hoping something would appear if the walking held enough faith. Your own eyes have searched empty branches more nights than you can count. When he turned, the provision was already caught, already held by its own horns, so it could not wander off before the exact moment it mattered. That is not luck. That is not a fortunate coincidence of timing. That is a father arranging an answer before the question is ever spoken out loud, hiding it exactly where panic never thinks to look, behind you, not ahead of you. Look back at the question underneath everything I said to you at the start of this message. Was the provision already there before your knife was ever lifted? Here is your answer. Yes. And it was caught by the horns on purpose, so it could not run, before you finally turned around to find it. The ram was already there. A silence like that feels empty while you are standing inside it. It is not empty. It is the sound of something being finished exactly where you have not yet learned to look. Your pain did not go unnoticed while it waited for you to reach the place you needed to be. It was not divine indifference. It was positioning. This is not only a story about a father and a son on a mountain. It has always pointed further than that morning. The son carried wood he did not know was for himself. My son carried a cross he knew completely was for you. The ram in the thicket was a shadow. A better substitute was still to come. That one did not need to be caught by the horns. He walked toward the altar willingly, on purpose. So your name would never have to be called out on that mountain at all. Whatever this pain has cost you, it was already covered by more than a ram in the branches. It was covered by the one the ram was only ever pointing toward. I know this can feel like ancient history, compared to what is actually breaking your heart this week, a message that never got answered. A chair at a table that stayed empty, a name you had to stop saying out loud because it hurt too much. But the same principle holds. Whatever specific provision your specific wound needs was not manufactured after the fact. I was not scrambling. I was not caught off guard by what happened to you. It was already positioned. The comfort you needed on the night you could not stop crying was already arranged. Before that night existed on a calendar. The friend, who would eventually understand without you having to explain everything, was already being prepared, even while you were still learning who not to trust. The same hands that tied that ram to the thicket have been arranging what comes next, what comes after your particular wound, the one shaped like a person who promised and did not deliver, the one shaped like a room full of people who chose the easier version of you to keep, who left the rest of you standing at the door. Your victory was not built the week you finally noticed it. It was built while you were still climbing, still carrying wood you never chose, still asking where the lamb was, receiving an answer that sounded like faith because it was honest, spoken before there was any proof to back it up. If that word, provided, feels true when you say it out loud, tell me so. One word. Wherever you happen to be reading this, let your eyes land on one plain thing near you. Do not name it. Just let it hold your attention for the length of a single breath. That is closer to how provision actually works than you might think. It was already there, waiting to be noticed rather than summoned. Here is where the lie about you finally loses its grip. The people who hurt you wanted you to walk away, believing something false. That you were the kind of person things like that always happened to. That is not true. What happened to you was real, and it was not a verdict on your worth. It was weather you walked through. It was never a permanent address. Now listen carefully, because this is the part fear cannot survive. The wound did not disqualify you from the provision. It walked you toward the exact place where you would finally look behind yourself and see it. Fear wants your eyes forward, always forward, bracing for the next blade to fall. Faith is the strange discipline of turning around. Trusting the answer was arranged before the walk ever began, even when every step of it felt unaccompanied. I know it is strange to hear me call myself vulnerable, but I have stood at more doors than you know, waiting to be let back in. After someone else wearing my name used silence as a weapon against you. Religion has hurt people in my name before. Someone, somewhere, may have taught you that love from me has conditions attached, the way love from people so often did. I did not write those conditions. I have been trying to undo them in you for longer than you have been listening. There is a version of you that stopped introducing people to who you really are. The last time you did, it got used against you later. You show up polished instead, managed, safe to leave. I'm not interested in the managed version. I've already seen underneath it. On the worst day you can remember, I did not walk away the way the others did. That is the whole difference between being handled and being kept. And being kept does not mean going back to full openness with everyone who ever hurt you. Some doors stay closed because closing them was wisdom, not unforgiveness. What I am inviting you into is trust in me specifically. I do not withdraw. I do not renegotiate the terms after you have already committed. What was arranged in the thicket stays arranged. Whether your faith on a given day feels strong or thin as smoke, time inside a wound moves differently than time outside of one. A month can feel like a decade when you are the one bleeding. I am not indifferent to how long the climb has felt to you. From where I stand, though, the ram was exactly where it needed to be, the entire time. Both things are true at once. Your suffering was real, and the provision was never actually late. It only felt late from inside the waiting. Maybe you are the one who has been strong for everyone else, so long that nobody thought to ask how the mountain was going for you personally. Maybe you are the one still setting a place at the table for a relationship that is not coming back the way it was. Maybe you are the one rebuilding a sense of safety, one ordinary day at a time. No applause, no audience, just the quiet work of learning to trust again. I see every version of you on that list. None of you were forgotten on the mountain. You are allowed to grieve what a person should have been to you and never was. Grief and gratitude can sit in the same room without canceling each other out. What I am asking is smaller than that too. Let the grief exist. Just do not let it write the final chapter. That chapter was never left in the hands of the one who hurt you. It was arranged in the branches before you even started climbing, held there by its own horns, waiting for the exact moment you would finally turn around. A rescue you have to earn is exhausting. It keeps a ledger. It asks you to perform enough pain, convincingly enough, for long enough, before it decides you have qualified for relief. A rescue that is simply given works differently. It does not wait for your performance to reach some invisible threshold. It was already standing in the branches while you were still convinced you had to save yourself through sheer willpower. One kind of help you earn one exhausting inch at a time. The other kind was already caught, already held, already yours. Long before you knew to look for it. There is a kind of victory coming that does not erase what happened to you, but it does resize it. Right now, the wound feels like the whole landscape. It fills the horizon. There is a day ahead. I am not going to put a date on it. Dates were never mine to promise you. But this pain will become one true chapter inside a much larger story, not the whole book. You will still remember it. You will not still be ruled by it, Let me be plain about what I am promising you today, so no one turns it into a promise I did not make. I am not promising every circumstance reverses on schedule, or that everyone who hurt you will suddenly understand what they did. What I am promising is steadier than that. Your worth was never in their hands to give or take. Your peace does not depend on an apology arriving. Your identity was settled in the branches of that thicket, long before you ever needed to defend it, to anyone, including yourself. Try this if it helps in the days ahead. The next moment, dread hands you a blade, the fear insisting you have to fix everything alone. Force an ending with your own strength before you are ready. Pause for 1 second. Literally glance over one shoulder. Nothing magical happens in that motion. What happens is smaller and steadier. You retrain your eyes to check behind you. Not only brace for what is ahead. That is the exact direction the old man on that mountain had stopped looking in until he was told to. This might not feel like much on your first attempt. Try it again on the days that feel heaviest. Most answers are not seen at the moment they are needed. They are seen at the moment someone finally turns around to look. If you want a second small practice, say the word provided out loud, quietly. Any moment an old wound tries to introduce itself as something brand new, not as a magic formula. A redirection, a way of turning your face from the altar back toward the branches, where the answer has been resting the whole time. You are not behind schedule. I know it feels that way some mornings. Watching people around you seem to heal faster, trust faster, move on faster. Healing is not a race with a leaderboard. Some wounds close in a season. Others take longer because they went deeper, and depth is not a flaw. It usually means you loved with your whole chest instead of holding some of it back for safekeeping. I let Abraham take 3 unhurried days to reach that mountain. I never once pushed him to move faster than the walking allowed. 3 days toward an unknown ending is not a short amount of time to trust in silence. Maybe hope has started to feel dangerous to practice. Every other time you let yourself hope, it cost you something when it did not arrive. I understand why you have been rationing it carefully. But hope aimed at me is different from hope aimed at people. People can only give what they have, and sometimes what they have is smaller than what they promised. What I have already provided does not run out. It does not change its mind. It was never dependent on your ability to convince me you deserved it in advance. Sometimes the way I answer a prayer is through another person, someone who has walked a version of this same mountain, someone who can sit with you on it without trying to fix you. If you have that kind of person, let them in a little further this week. If you do not have that kind of person yet, ask me for one specifically. I have answered that particular request more times than you will ever know about. The victory coming after this pain will not look like a spotlight moment. Not everyone will see what you survived. Sometimes it looks like a Tuesday where you notice you did not brace when the phone rang. Sometimes it looks like trusting one new person by degrees instead of all at once, or not at all. Sometimes it is simply the day the wound is not the first thought that finds you anymore. That is not a small victory. That is the one I have been building toward the entire time. You spent so long staring at the road ahead, waiting for permission to keep walking, bracing for a blade that never needed to fall on you at all. Turn around, not in fear, not in panic. Slowly, the way a person turns when they finally trust that what they are about to see will not hurt them. Look at what has been standing there in the branches this entire time, caught by its own horns, waiting for exactly this moment to be found. Maybe you are reading this today specifically because you are still standing on the mountain, wood already stacked, wondering if this might be the one time the provision does not show up. I understand why that fear makes sense to you. The people who taught you to expect disappointment were not wrong about themselves. They were only ever wrong about me. I am not them. I have never confused your obedience with your worth. I am not going to start now. Not on this mountain, not with this particular ache. What was true on that ancient morning is true in this ordinary moment of yours. The provision does not depend on how convincingly you climb. It depends on who arranged it, and I arranged it before you were born. I know some of you will close this, go right back into a day that does not feel like it has changed at all. That is normal. Provision being real does not always announce itself with fireworks the moment you learn about it. Sometimes it just quietly changes what you do. The next time fear hands you a blade, a half-second pause before you swing it, a glance over your shoulder you did not used to take. Small changes like that compound. They are not nothing. They are the beginning of a very different climb. If shame has been running the account of what you are allowed to receive from me, close that account today. You do not have to prove you deserve the provision before you accept it. The old man did not earn the ram, not by climbing well, not by grieving correctly or saying all the right words on the way up. The ram was never a reward for good performance under pressure. It was a gift, positioned in advance. A father already knew exactly how hard that specific mountain would be, for that specific son to climb. So walk down from whatever mountain you have been standing on, carrying less than you carried on the way up. You do not have to explain the whole story to anyone who was not there for it. You do not have to perform gratitude before you actually feel it. Just let this be true, quietly, for now. The worst part is behind you, in more ways than one. So is the answer. The pain did not write your ending. It walked you to the place where the ending was already provided. The wound was real. The delay was real. But behind you, the whole time, something was caught and held and kept for exactly this moment. The ram was already there. Amen. One more thing before this screen goes quiet. I tucked a few lines into the comment pinned at the top of this page. Not a countdown, not a bundle, just a handful of sentences for the mornings this week when looking behind you feels harder than looking ahead. If you know someone still standing on a mountain with no ram in sight, send this to them. They might need to turn around too.